Hey guys, it's the Gun the Boy, and today we're going to be taking a look at the stealth of the game. I'm going to give you some tips and some things to know about how to be sneaky. But to do this effectively, we need to know how they see and hear, so let's take a quick look at that. So for simplicity's sake, we're going to cover the way vision functions going off of how the automatons react, and the range in which they can see you depends on whether you're standing, crouching, or prone. And just because I'm doing it against the bots, it doesn't mean you can't use these similar techniques about stealth on the bugs. They're just a bit more fickle when it comes to stealth. When it comes to your stance, it really does have an impact on how stealthy you will be for a majority of your missions. And I say that because enemies can see you at 40 meters during the day. And I know some people would be like, oh, that's bullshit, but I'm gonna be real with you. I can see you too if you look like this. But even if you're visible in the bigger greenery, if you're wearing the stealth armor, you can get oddly close to some of the enemies. And all the factions have different audio cues and body language to let them know that they've seen you. Like bugs will kind of prairie dog upwards and be like, hey, who's that? And the voteless kind of get that like Vinaboom red eye effect that people like to use in memes. So watch their body language and listen for any audio cues that might indicate that they've spotted you. And if you're trying to sneak up on your enemies from the front, you may be limited to a certain range, but if you're crawling behind them, you can get suspiciously close. Oh, so we're gonna take a look at how close you can get with standing, crouching, and prone. Or I like to say SCP. From what I tested with the non-scout armor, you can get 50 meters close standing up, 38 meters if you're crouching, and 23 meters if you're prone. And this is interesting because that changes way more when it's night. And that's right, night does have an effect on how sneaky you can be. Because at night you can get 40 meters close to an enemy while standing, 28 meters while you're crouching, and 20 meters at night if you're crawling. And this may not be 100% correct. I'm sure that there is some kind of data mine thing that tells you the exact numbers, but that doesn't count for the fact that you're gonna be on weird terrain like rocks, mountains, forests, jungles. These are just the things that I was able to find from my tests. And if you're trying to go for complete evasion, I would just keep it at 50 meters if you're standing, 40 meters if you're crouching, and 25 meters away if you're prone. Same thing applies if you're trying to do this at night, just keep it at 40, 30, and 25. But if you're gonna go stealthy, I recommend you might as well go full swing and take a scout armor to go with you, because you can be standing at 35 meters in front of some of the enemies and they don't even realize you're there. And when it comes to crouching, you get the 25, and for prone, you can get at a weird 13 during the day. And the armor still gets the benefit of the night effect, which makes it even easier to be stealthy, going 25 meters to 19 to 12. And I decided to test this against something like a heavy dev just to see if there's any differences between a trooper and a devastator's eyes, and no, from what I've tested, they have pretty similar vision because even up to 49 meters, they can still see you. It makes me wonder if the devastators, despite standing idly still, have a cone of vision that sweeps around similar to the troopers. I wonder if that's why he didn't notice me in the first couple of tests. And that's right, the enemies do have a cone of vision, and they are capable of looking left and right to see if there's someone sneaking up to bite his ankles. But keep in mind, whether you're standing, crouching, or prone, there is a way to be invisible to the enemy. Just try not to be obvious about it. So when it comes to hearing, though, this is where I say the stealth mechanics get kinda weird, because even though I am ripping this HMG, throwing grenades, and just absolutely massacring this very obvious bot drop, this Devastator has no idea what's going on, and he has only been in an alert state, and he just completely gives up. He's like, must have been the wind. To get better at stealthing, you must keep in mind that sounds make sounds, and that sounds alerts the sounding enemies to your sounding location. I found anything under 50 meters, and if you're still a fair distance away from them, say if you're 40 meters, firing a gun will leak to the enemies just kind of being like, hey, did you guys hear that? When it comes to the automatons, at least, firing at least 49 meters away from them, they don't seem to care. But anything closer, and you kind of get combat chatter from them. Like, they're like, hey, did you guys hear that? And most enemies do, so here's an example. Yeah, right there, that guy's suspicious. See, but they're only suspicious. They're not actually pursuing me or alert to the sense of where they're gonna try and shoot me. The instance where I had the Devastator turn around was underneath 39 meters and firing my gun, but they only remain suspicious. Now, if you get this close and you fire a gun, then everybody goes fucking haywire, because guess what? You just fired and announced your location to everybody. Something you gotta keep in mind, especially when it comes to the voteless, is that they're super sensitive to sound. So if they're within a certain radius of you firing that gun, you will draw attention to yourself to whoever's nearby, like these two clowns. If you fire your gun in a vicinity where there's enemies in equal distances on both sides of you, you end up with the horde situation of a bunch of zombies swarming. So I was like, oh shit, this wasn't planned. So I ran away, And turns out, yeah, no, every voteless came into this corner and they're crowding that motherfucker up. Too bad they don't know I know how to break into people's houses. And I don't know if this is like a one-time instance of it happening, but when I shot in the distance and nearby, knowing damn well these Illuminate guys would hear me, they didn't flinch a muscle. In fact, they didn't chase me at all. But when I fired my gun over here where the patrol is, I think patrol units are a little bit more sensitive about the sounds, because when I fired that motherfucker, they all started running over to me. Like, look at that, here they come. So keep in mind your audio levels. I'd say enemies become suspicious around 40 to 50 meters, so try not to make too much noise around that, but anything underneath that, you make a sound, they're probably gonna attack you. So here's an enemy standing idly, he's just kinda defending his position. Then we have an alert / suspicious state in which the enemies may just turn to look to see where that sound came from, but not actively pursue you. In investigating states, these enemies will go and look in the last location they heard a sound or whatever caught their attention. This guy can ruin your stealth runs pretty easily. And this one's pretty straightforward, we have the full aggression state where they're trying to kill you, and you know, we all know this one. Next up, we have the soft aggression state, which is a weird mixture between going full hostile and still not knowing where you are. So these guys will kind of fire at whatever direction they heard you, but not really make any effort to follow you, especially something like a dev. Looking at the patrols, you should keep in mind that these guys usually spawn in a direction facing you, so they try to cross paths to start an engagement. It's pretty easy to just disengage by changing movement patterns, but if you have to engage with an enemy patrol, it's good to know what enemies you're going up against. Like on the bot patrols, you need to keep an eye out specifically for troopers, because they're the only dudes who can call for backup. It's also watchers on the Illuminate front that you need to keep an eye out for, and when it comes to literally anything on the bug front, any of the chaff will call for backup, so they're kind of the harder guys to do stealth with. This is the only situation where I can commend using the airburst rocket launcher for stealth killing a patrol. Abusing the state of the enemy where they're at a half alert, half aggression state, you can lure them away from certain directions and sneak around, as I was able to get this heavy dev and his devastator buddy to walk across the map to basically an empty area where they thought I would be. Here they are, still walking in the direction of where I shot them because they don't know where I went. I like to use this specifically on the Illuminate vote list when I'm trying to sneak around the cities and I see a patrol walking around, because they hear that grenade go off and they swarm that fucker. And you can abuse the fact that sounds draw attentions of enemies to get away from things like bug breaches pretty quickly. Sometimes you gotta keep moving though, because there's enemies that may still track you as they can try to find you. Another thing that we can use in our arsenal for stealth is smokes. And smokes, by the way, don't make you invisible. It just reduces the accuracy, as I learned the hard way. And smoke grenades are perfect for evasion and overall just avoiding detection. So I would say though, keep in mind if you're going to smoke an area, try to remember what's hiding in there, because sometimes the enemies can see just as well as you can in the smoke and will shoot you. And it can be terrifying when you realize what's hiding inside that smoke. And smokes can be beneficial for avoiding things like observer eyes, which would be more beneficial to you if you're in the open middle of the desert, but when I'm in the middle of the jungle forest, it feels kind of redundant. And for you non-believers, here's the observer eye looking right over me and not reacting at all. I don't know who told me that they believe that it would see you. You're dumb. You're stinky. I would actually argue that there is some offensive use in smokes. If you want to get in there and fast as you can to destroy an objective, smokes offer a good way to cover you, and that's a berserker. Yeah. Whenever I'm fighting in the smoke, I feel like I have control of the battle, even if I am fumbling all my controls and my ammo loads. And I think this is due to the fact that the enemies still have a harder time seeing you, which means they have a harder time trying to actually engage you. And if you can smoke them as fast as you can smoke the area, then you'll be able to leave with some cover behind you while the enemies are still wondering what hit them. This does struggle against agile enemies, as they will constantly keep you within their view cone, making everybody aware of where you're running while shooting at you and taking pot shots at your butt crack. But that's it from me. I need to go work on my super credits so I can get that warp on. Oh, I want to be a Django Fett!